All right.
I'm John Robert Miller, and I'm 96 years old, the 28th of May, and I've lived in Temple Hill area most of my life till the last few years I've lived here in Glasgow. My sweetheart died 6 years ago, Christine Miller, and so I live by myself now. And of course, got three boys, and Johnny, Lenny, and Donnie. And so when I was 18, I went into the service. I volunteered. I was 18 the 28th of May and went in the second day of June. And I went to Camp Wallace, Texas to do my basic. And from there, we went to Midland, Texas to do some more training for invasions and whatever. And Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. So they shipped us back from Midland, Texas to New York City to protect the harbor there because the Germans had a lot of submarines and they were afraid they were going to mess up the harbor. So they sent us there for 2 months, and from after that was over, then of course Japan was really working hard to secure the Philippines, and so they shipped us back to California to go overseas, and we got on the SS Monterey, which used to be a luxury ship. It was 5,000 of us on it, and we started at the Philippines and got about halfway between Hawaii and the Philippines, and the Japs had already taken the Philippines and run MacArthur out, so they sent us to Australia to land. So we were on the boat 40 days, and then we got out there in Australia, and Japs were trying to take Darwin, the northern part of Australia. So they shipped us to Townsville because MacArthur was building his Sixth Army there. So we've started training them for the invasions of New Guinea, and so we left Townsville in 43, 42, no 43, excuse me, January 43, and went to Port Moresby, New Guinea. And then from Port Moresby, New Guinea, we went to Lae, New Guinea, and from Lae, New Guinea to Markham Valley, and from Markham Valley then to Wadkey Island, and Wadkey Island to Hollandia, New Guinea, and then from there we went to Maffin Bay, Dutch New Guinea, and then we up through that where we they started training us for the invasion of the Philippines. So then they trained us for about a month, and then we started to make the invasion of the Philippines October the 20th, 1944. And we made that invasion, and then from there, well, after we got that secured, well, they sent us to Mindoro, Philippines, which is about 300 miles east of Manila, Philippines, and we took that island, and that was of course, getting closer to the headquarters of the Japanese there in the Philippines, and so at that time I contracted malaria, dengue fever, and jungle rot, and couldn't walk, and because my feet were no toenails or whatever, so then they decided that they'd send me home for 30 days to try to doctor me over here, and then I was going back to the Philippines. And so when we got back to the United States in May, and the Germans had surrendered the sixth day of, I mean, the 10th day of, 8th day of May 1945. And so we went to Camp Atterbury so we could go home. And when we got there, they said, how many points you got? And I said, what do you mean points? And they said, well, if you've been overseas, you get I think it's 2 points for every month overseas. So I had 42 months overseas. And then so much for if you were in the army, so many, and then each battle that you were in, you got stars, and so points, and so ended up that I had 126 points, and so I was the third man out of Camp Canterbury, and so I went home then, and of course met my wife, and I'd never seen her before, and then 3 months later, we married and had our 3 children. So
So you didn't know Christine, your
no,
wife, before the war?
no.
Okay.
I just met her at George J's. She was washing dishes,
Ah,
and she was at the restaurant there then, George J's.
right.
Besides being a pharmacy, and so she was washing dishes behind the counter, and she looked up at me and winked at me, and that was it.
And you all were married how many years?
We were married 67 years.
67.
Yeah, and she passed away in 2013.
Okay. I know you all had a special family and,
Yes.
and were blessed
Yes,
for all those
absolutely.
years.
We had 3 boys and 4 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren.
Okay. You're going back to the war and your time there in the South Pacific, essentially, right? Were you connected or close to Guadalcanal at the time that was about taking place?
Yeah, we were when they were invading Guadalcanal. We were invading New Guinea.
Okay. So that was a simultaneous kind of
right.
invasion there, wasn't it?
See, that was all under McCarthy.
Okay.
And he was doing it all to order. See, the Japs had taken all those islands with nobody on them. All they had to do was just drop people off then, because there's nobody on those islands, only natives, and they didn't have guns or anything. Of course, they didn't wear clothes or nothing, and so all they had to do was drop them off. Drop the soldiers off, and then they built their forts and whatever, and then we had to take it back from them. So it was easy for them to take them, but they didn't give them up very easy after they got them, because that was their base, and they were planning on taking Australia too, because Australia was just an island, and they only had 7 million people on it at that time, and they didn't have anything to fight with, and so they were tickled to death to see us come, because we were the first Americans over in Australia at that time.
Okay.
And because nobody else had gone, we were the first ones to leave for the Philippines, and of course we couldn't go there because the Japs had already taken it. But anyway, we was the first unit to leave for overseas in January of 42, and that was, of course, like I said, it took us 40 days to go, and that was the worst 40 days. I'd never been on a boat before, of course, and it was rough.
I can't imagine 40 days on a ship.
And then, you had nothing to take a bath with, only salt water. And if you've ever tried to take a bath in salt water, it's just like molasses.
Did it rain much? Were you able to enjoy any rainwater as far as?
Yes, in New Guinea, it was a lot of it, and of course we was just a little ways off the equator, and when it wasn't raining, it was about 130 degrees.
Goodness.
And it was really hot, and of course that's why we contacted the jungle rot, because I was fair skinned, and see the New Guinea natives that lived there, they were all black, and they didn't catch jungle rot and all like we did, because of the pigment of their skin, So, and they didn't have malaria like we did, and they didn't have dengue fever like we did, and we took Ativan all the time to keep from having it, but he still had it, and of course some people were more susceptible to it than others, because your skin, if your skin was white, the mosquitoes got at you more than you did if you was darker skinned.
Okay. when they sent you back for that 30 days for the treatment, did that work within that 30 days? You were well at the end?
It took longer than that, but I mean, but it did. My fingernails and toenails started growing back, and they had already started back within 30 days. I still had my malaria and dengue fever, but my jungle rot was. I didn't have any toenails or fingernails, and your fingers were in sympathy with your toes. They said, and that's why that you had it on your hands and on your feet too.
Wow!
And so, and it was. I mean, your fingernails just rotted off, and your toes. The reason they sent me home because I couldn't walk, but didn't have any toenails, and it was bloody, you know, where the toenails were.
Oh goodness!
And so we had to cut our toes of our shoes off to let some air into our feet, and so they sent me home for them for that.
Okay.
And there was only like 5 of us, I believe, that came back at that time, and we asked, of course, you asked for furloughs, but you couldn't get any because there's no way. They had to have somebody to replace you with, and they didn't have anybody. So
I see. Will you share what medals that you came home with at the end of the war?
Well, I had combat medals, of course, and I had Philippine medals. I had the South Pacific medals. I had the battles of the Philippines and New Guinea, and stars for those. And I don't know. I can't think of all of them.
But several.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet General MacArthur?
I saw him. Yes, I didn't meet him personally.
But you got to see him.
But I saw him. I saw him when he came in. To Leyte. We were already there when he came in. He came wading in, and they were taking pictures of him, of course. And he come in. It didn't suit him, I reckon, because they sent him back to the ship, and he come in again. And he was wading water about to straddle, you know. And so, you know, we thought it was funny because they sent him back twice to come in to make the invasion. But anyway, he was a good general. He was a good general. I didn't like him because he kept us over there so long, but he was a good general. He took care of his men. He didn't send us in unless he thought he could win it. And so I did admire him. He was a good general.
Pictures that I've seen of him, he always has a pipe. Did he have his pipe?
Yeah, corncob pipe.
That was a trademark. It wasn't.
Corncob pipe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course he had a son, and his wife was with him in the Philippines. And when the Japs took it, well, they got him on a PT boat and took his wife and his son and him all into Townsville, Australia. And that's where he started his 6th Army then, was there in Townsville. And Townsville was only like 300 miles from New Guinea.
Okay.
So it was, Port Moresby was the closest town, so that's where we started back to get to the Philippines.
Okay. One thing about MacArthur, later, what were your thoughts when the President Truman, fired him?
I hated it because he was there. MacArthur was there. He knew what we needed, and I thought more of his judgment than I did of Truman's, because MacArthur was there. I mean, he knew the islands. He knew that area and knew the landscape. He knew everything, and he was trying to protect. In fact, he didn't want to. If he couldn't win it, he didn't want to be in the battle, because your men have got to believe in what they're doing, or they don't fight good. So, and he always aimed to win when he went into a place because of the morale of his men. So,
understand.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Miller.
All righty.
And one more thing, we've been out and about at Freedom.
Yes.
You were a soldier fighting for our freedoms.
Right.
Did you ever think about the fact that you lived at a place near a place that was named Freedom? And
Yes, because my grandmother told me about freedom, and so that's why I always cherish freedom because of that.
part of your destiny, huh?
Right.
Well, thank you. It's been
Yes,
an
sir.
enjoyable day.
Yes, sir. Thank you.